Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Zareth Prevails, a Grand Arena story. This episode has a lot of new elements to it compared to past episodes. I've changed up my defensive lineup, which I'll get to in a little bit. I had a lot of prep work that I had to do. I used a lot of new teams to counter currently existing teams. It's kind of an exciting episode, and I'm really excited to bring it to you guys. Going into this match, probably the biggest factor was that my opponent finally had both a Darth Revan that was faster than mine and a Bastila that was faster than mine. That's fallen Bastila, if you didn't catch the bad in there. Further, my opponent was using the Marauder instead of Sith Trooper, which meant that they had a ton of offense and they'd be able to really do a lot of damage. I mean, honestly, that's probably the one team that's not very beatable if you have slower Revan and Bastila and your opponent has Sith Marauder. It's going to be a really, really difficult match to win just because they're doing all the damage first and they're getting all their debuffs off, and then you can't get any debuffs of your own. And so you need to do a little bit of prep work in order to win this. It's a different story in Arena, but as far as Grand Arena Championships go, you can probably mess around a little bit by trying to get two teams that can beat it. And so I spent a huge amount of crystals, well over 1,000 in Arena, attacking the Shard Whale, or Kraken really, with a very similar setup to my opponents here, just to try to figure out which droids I could potentially use to be able to kind of soften up the Darth Revan team. The goal is always to beat the Revan team on the first try, but if you can't do that, you want to be able to take out Bastila and Revan if possible. Bastila is actually a little bit more important in some ways, and in my testing I found that targeting her was going to yield a Darth Revan kill a lot more often than just targeting Darth Revan himself. And so that's what I did. I took General Grievous, who was not in the leader slot, so that they could not put the Deathmark debuff on Grievous so they could target him and do extra damage to him. And instead, I was just able to take the droids one by one. They died. And here I have a decision to try for the AoE and kill really 3 of those guys, everyone but Malak. But I decided for the more certain thing and killing Darth Revan, just because his leadership does so much for those guys, and having it out of there is really going to make that match a lot easier. It honestly seems a little bit silly to show you guys a 2-minute clip that represents so much background work just to make happen. I tried so many different team compositions with, Grievous as the leader, which doesn't work at all, IG-88, which I think would potentially work with a different team comp, but I was just kind of messing around with teams, really trying to find which droids that I had that could actually do it. One really sad part of this episode, or rather of this matchup, is that I didn't have Grievous on defense, which is really a great team stopper. So I was already going to be operating at a deficit. That meant that I really didn't have much wiggle room in terms of banners, or at least that's what my perception was. If my opponent would be able to full clear me that much easier, it was actually kind of questionable whether I'd be able to win this match at all, just given the fact that I was going into this match thinking maybe I would need 2 attacks just to beat their Revan squad, and who knows how many attacks to beat their others. You see here I decided not to take my Sith Marauder, mostly because my Sith Marauder doesn't do much, and I really wanted to get more understrength wins, because I lost in round 6, I think it was. I really wanted to try to make back some points in the Grand Arena feats, so trying to get those I don't know if that was a wise priority or not, but I did feel pretty confident that I'd be able to beat the remaining 3, just because they're not operating under any kind of leadership at this point, because I killed the only leader the Sith Empire has at the time, which is Darth Revan. At any rate, there you have it. I was able to beat a Darth Revan team with a basically faster everyone and better everyone than my own guys. And really, I mean, 37 banners, that's not great. That means I really have to max out the rest of my attacks, but it wasn't too bad. I mean, I wasn't sure going into the match that I would even get past that team at all. So being able to beat it in 2 tries, that's not terrible. Now, one really awesome thing was that my opponent had already attacked on me and full cleared me, which being full cleared isn't awesome, of course, but being able to know what kind of banners I needed to earn was really important. And my opponent failed one attack against my Geonosians, but they were also not that efficient in terms of what kind of attacks they did. They ended up missing about 60-ish banners total, which is actually kind of a lot. If you've seen some of my videos, I usually try, to miss 10 banners or less. So I had a little bit of wiggle room, and I decided that this First Order team didn't seem particularly strong. There was no First Order officer. They're using both TIE pilots here, which, they have good offense, but it's not a top-tier First Order team by any stretch. And I decided that because I'd already given 3 Zetas to my Phoenix, actually 4 since I'm counting Ezra here, I wanted to give them a spin. I've really been working on Phoenix just to try to get another team available for Grand Arena, and this was a good opportunity to kind of test them because I had other teams in my arsenal to be able to, kind of make up for any fails on this end. I'm a little clunky here since this is really the first time I've used Phoenix other than my epic fail against Old Republic, but I had remodded Zeb since that last episode and given him a ton more protection. I put a Zeta on Hera as well, and I was doing okay. Zeb, you really want to use Zeb as much as you can to get stuns and to be able to get daze on people. I think daze is actually even potentially more important than stuns are. Well, maybe not more important, but they're easier to get in this context. So using Zeb here, being able to kind of spam that attack by calling him to assist with Ezra and with Hera is a really cool thing. And Hera, adds the extra 25 or 50% potency once you give her Zeta. So that's solid. Hopefully I didn't just waste it. Anyways, I'm not going to get super technical here in terms of advice on how to play this team, just because I don't have a ton of experience using this team. But I will say that they seemed pretty strong. Ezra came really close to dying for a minute there, if you saw it. Which I don't know if it's possible to stop that. I'm going to look at his mods a little later and see if I can add some protection or something. And eventually, actually, my goal, I think, is just going to be putting the 4th, or rather 5th, and final Zeta on Zeb, just to finish the squad and get some extra damage out there. I think Zeb's a pretty important part of this team, and doing a little extra damage isn't bad. And then I'd have the option just not to bring Ezra at all and forego scary moments like him almost dying and, having to dodge against Kylo Ren or whatever, his AoE. Anyways, I got a win, which I was really pumped about because that meant I'd be able to really use all of my best teams to counter my opponent's best teams. I'm really excited to use Phoenix in the future. Now, the next match is another new thing. I'm trying new things this episode, apparently. And this one was really interesting. So someone in one of my previous Grand Arena videos had commented that someone else that they follow on YouTube, whose name is Klesso, had used a Jedi Revan team against General Grievous, but instead of using the typical Jedi Revan as the leader, that Klesso had used Bastila as lead, and it had been a pretty convincing win. So I later that night actually tested that out in Territory Wars. I had the opportunity, and it worked like a charm. I didn't really know how many banners I would have gotten, since they count banners a little bit differently, but I decided that it was convincing enough that I would try it again in Grand Arena. And you can see I even just took Ayla Secura as my 5th, so I really didn't have anyone too special. This team isn't rock solid. I mean, Ayla is gear 12 and all that, and the thing I like about her is that she stuns on all of her attacks, but she basically spent the entire round just using her extortion thing and essentially buffing all of the separatists. Anyways, this was a gear 13 General Grievous team, so even though the rest of the team was quote-unquote only gear 12, General Grievous at gear 13 can really get up to some crazy damage, and it's one of the most difficult teams to take out currently. So I was pretty nervous going in. You never want to drop or fail an attack, but I'd only ever had one attack of experience anyway, so if I'd gotten good RNG on that attack, I could really be in for some hurt, because I don't think I really had another team that could beat this General Grievous team, other than, maybe trying to out-attrition it again like I've done with Traya in the past, but that's really not something I wanted to even consider, to be honest. I was really trying to get as many banners as I could, just because if I did have to end up failing one of my attacks, I really needed to make sure that I was able to still get the win, because if I fail a second attack, the margin for error really, really goes down. So getting a win, no matter how many banners I got here, I didn't really care about banners in this case. I just wanted to get the win. That was really my goal here. So you saw that I kind of set it up so that I could kill Newt at the same time as B1, and of course Newt revived after that in stealth, so that was a little dumb, but I saved myself from Grievous being able to get multiple hits on me just by giving him the full turn meter and all that. The part of his kit that is absolutely dumb, that when you kill one of his guys, he just basically resets and does a stupid amount of damage, and you can't really stop it. So being able to kill 2 guys at the same time is kind of nice. And now I'm really, really just trying to avoid killing Newt if possible. We want to be able to just kill Grievous here without any kind of crazy shenanigans by him getting multiple turns and just wrecking the team without any chance for Jolie to revive or whatever. But 57 banners is excellent. I was really surprised. I thought that I'd end up with less, and to be honest, my opponent's General Grievous squad, his General Grievous wasn't all the way fully 6E modded. They think General Grievous had 95k health, which, I mean, it's not 100,000, it's still pretty good. So all in a few matches, I had a Darth Revan team that I couldn't beat with my own Darth Revan team that I was able to beat. I used Phoenix successfully for the first time, and I was able to use a Bastila squad. Thank you to Klesso once again. Look him up, Klesso, for the good idea. Even if it was indirect, I want to give credit. Don't want to steal ideas or anything crazy like that. But I done all those things in the same series of attacks, so I was actually in a pretty good stance now. A lot of the best teams that my opponent had to give me had already been beat, so I've been using this bounty hunter counter for Old Republic lately, which is great. I don't have to use one of my premier teams like Padme or Jedi Knight Revan against them. It's just kind of a nice use for them. I actually came really close to using my Phoenix squad to take this team on just because there were a couple Gear 11s here. This wasn't the best geared squad either for my opponent, but I decided I was a little gun shy, to be honest. I want to do a little more research and see if I could use Ezra instead of Chopper against this team. I kind of think the answer might be no, just because of the health regen that Chopper offers, and Kanan really needs that. But I could have tried Phoenix. I probably would have beat this team. But I really wanted to make sure I was maxing my banners, and I thought that the First Order team was also an excellent opportunity for Phoenix to prove their worth, so to speak. Plus, bounty hunters here are just great, because assuming you win, which it's really never in doubt, you're going to get max banners, or at least close to it. 59. I mean, that's pretty acceptable, considering the teams that my opponent had remaining. And here I was really dumbfounded. An old DACA lead team with maxed out Night Sisters. And I scratched my head for a while, and then I read old DACA's lead, which is really simple. It's just plus 50% health and plus 50% defense. So we'll talk about that in a minute once I decide to fight that. So first, I wanted to make sure that the Geonosians were accounted for. They're a really strong squad. You really need a meta team to be able to beat them. And so I wanted to make sure I had that team locked down first. I didn't see the Night Sisters as dangerous as the Geonosians. So this is another iteration of my attempts to use Traya convincingly against the Geonosians. I've tried just Traya and Scion, which is really scary and can potentially fail. If they hit hard enough, Spy can really do a ton of damage. I've tried Traya with Nihilus and Scion, and they just kind of killed Nihilus, and even though I was able to win the match, there wasn't much point in having Nihilus at that point, so I wanted to try Dooku here because theoretically, if he gets attacked at any point, he can do a counter and potentially stun them or kind of disrupt their plans. And here at this point, I was able to beat the Alpha, and that's great. It takes away their hive mind ability, which turns them all into the useless piles that we all know and love. But this was a pretty convincing win. I think I'm going to try this composition again. And of course, later down the line, if I do something crazy like Gear Sith Marauder, which I actually, spoiler alert, already have done all the way up till I haven't put his finisher piece on, but he's done. So once he's all the way done, I'll be able to swap him out, and then maybe I can put Sith Trooper in with Traya there instead of Dooku, since I think Dooku's probably earmarked for another squad down the line. I'm not really sure what the CG's plans are, but you have to think that there's going to be at least a couple more Separatist characters to be released, though they haven't really said anything at this point. So the Ewok versus Troopers narrative continues, and I thought I'd try a twist on it this time, try to get an under strength win just because there were a few Gear 11 characters. I actually think that Chirpa might have been like Gear 9 or something. You can go back and look if it really matters to you. But I decided to leave out Snow Trooper just to try to get an under strength win, which I got. So with that zone done, I was able to focus on the oddball zone in the back, which had bounty hunters with Aurra Sing lead, and it had Bossk in it though, so it was a pretty oddball bounty hunter squad. And then the really strange one, old DACA as the lead for Night Sisters, but all Gear 13. So you have to think that my opponent was doing something crazy. I mean, they clearly know Night Sisters well. They love them if they're going to put all of them into Gear 13. But old DACA lead versus Asajj or Mother Talzin just seems so strange. And what I realized was that my opponent had a ton of health on all of these Night Sisters, and then Aldaka was able to give them plus 50% extra on top of that, and defense, so they were hard to hit. And depending on what squad you used to counter them, like troopers, for instance, troopers would really, really struggle against this team. I mean, they already do if the Night Sisters have spirit, but if you try to use troopers, I think it's probably a lost cause. That being said, Padme is just too good of a counter, just because they deal damage in terms of percentage of health and that's really all they do here. They don't really care how many hit points someone has. They care about taking down their percentage of max health. And really, I mean, in some ways that hurt my opponent, just because they're doing this huge amount of damage every hit because it's based on their health, which all the Night Sisters have way more health than they have protection even. Anyways, maybe something is up with this Aldaka team. You can see Kenobi was actually kind of close to dead. He was on yellow health, so of course he healed right before, so didn't really matter that much. 59 banners is obviously still excellent. And going into this round, this is going to be a new entry for my Google Sheets document. I don't think I've ever fought an Aurra Sing bounty hunter team. I figured, though, that probably First Order was going to do just fine against them. I actually was a little bit foolish. My internet connection was really, really bad. It was dependable, but it was really slow. So I ended up just kind of winging it. I should have looked up what Aurra's leadership does, and that's on me. That's foolish. But I had a vague impression that she gave stealth at the start, and she was more of a raid leader rather than a PvP leader. And even though it was kind of irresponsible of me to go into this fight without really knowing what Aurra Sing leadership does, it ended up working out pretty well. I think there's a reason that Bossk or Jango are the leaders in this circumstance. And yeah, this was a little scary. I thought that I had lost my connection entirely here just because of how slow it had been. So being able to see those magic numbers show up as victory, that's a good feeling. And so there you have it. I was able to take the win. I was under 1,900 banners, which that's not ideal, but honestly, I was able to beat a lot of teams that were really challenging. And you can see I had to be a little bit different on my defense. I put my Night Sisters, of course, but I put CLS in the front, and my goal was really just to try to make my opponent use up all their really good teams right at the start and make them potentially use some bad teams just to be able to counter whatever I had hidden. And it seemed to work because my bugs were able to get a win, which actually I think I could have won even if my opponent had gotten the win on my bugs from the very start. But as it stood, I was very happy with this result. I haven't quite started my next round, but I do know who my opponent is, and luckily for me, I'll be able to use my General Grievous team on defense again. So we're back in action next time. I'm hoping that my defenses will do some good, though you never know. It'll be the finals, so you know that your opponent's going to be good. And so far, it's been a really terrific series for me. I was able to beat a really skilled player in my first round and a really well-modded character in my next round. So until the next episode, thank you so much for watching. And remember that in all things, Zereth prevails.